Hello dear students, welcome to Bajirao IAS Academy, the Hindu News Analysis. So today is 23rd June 2024 and we have few very important and relevant news articles from different newspapers. So without any delay, let's start our discussion. And you all knew that we have some practice question that I've given to you in the last class. The question was Champions of Earth Award that recognizes outstanding environmental leaders from the public and private sectors was established by which of the following agencies, right? So this Champions of Earth Award is announced and given by the United Nations Environment Program. So United Nations Environment Program is the correct answer for this question, and this Champions of Earth Award, so that actually recognizes outstanding environmental leadership from public and private sectors, right? So if you go into the explanation part, United Nations Environment Program actually gives this Champions of Earth Award, and in fact this Champions of Earth Award is United Nations top environmental honor. In fact, it celebrates individuals, groups, organizations for their contributions with respect to environment, and in fact it has also recognizes leaders in government, civil society organizations, private sector. So it was established in 2005 and it has been honoring leaders or leading efforts to protect our world, right? So especially with respect to environment and nature conservation and protection. And remember that Prime Minister Narendra Modi also received this Champions of Earth Award in the year 2022. So Champions of Earth Award is announced by United Nations Environment Program. So today also I have one more important prelims practice question. So this is with respect to polity, and this is also one of the previous year questions asked by the UPSC. I think this question was asked by UPSC in the year 2018. The question is, which principle among the following was added to the Directive Principles of State Policy by the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act? Now we all knew that in part 4 we have Directive Principles of State Policy, and in this Directive Principles of State Policy there were certain DPSPs which were added through various constitutional amendment acts. However, the question is asking that which of the following DPSPs was added through the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act? Option A, equal pay for equal work for both men and women. Option B, participation of workers in the management of industries. Option C, right to work, education and public assistance. And option D, securing living wage and human conditions of work to workers. So please answer this question in the comment section, and this is also a very easy question and previous year question and important question, right? So correct answer I'll be providing you in tomorrow's lecture. So let's start our discussion by few important articles. The first important article that we are looking into is the severity of heat waves that India has been going through since last 2 months, because the heat wave severity has substantially increased in certain parts of our country, and that led to a significant increase in the death rate, primarily because of the heat wave conditions. Now if you look into the context of this article, so India has been bearing the brunt of the longest stretch of a heat wave. So now last 2-3 months we have summers, and these summers the heat wave actually reached its peak, especially states like UP, Bihar and Delhi. So that has led to the death of number of individuals. So according to the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare figures, they have been suggesting that at least 100 have died because of the heat wave related illness, right? So heat related or heat wave related illness, around 100 people were died from March 1 to June 18 across India. So therefore, in fact, this is the government data, but it is generally said that this data is underreported because there were number of deaths which took place because of heat wave, but those deaths were not reported. Now if you look into the heat wave as a natural disaster, so we also have a comprehensive framework under the National Disaster Management Act. So this National Disaster Management Act actually recognizes number of disasters which which actually eligible for the relief from central and state governments. However, the problem with the heat wave is that heat wave is not included in the National Disaster Management Act as a natural disaster. So because of that reason, even if center and state governments wanted to provide any relief for this heat wave like conditions or heat waves across India, so the funding would not be provided for this heat wave from the National Disaster Management Fund or State Disaster Management Fund. So even though there are some states like Kerala, they already put in some relief efforts to provide more and more relief for the people who have been facing this extreme heat wave like condition. Now when we talk about this National Disaster Management Act, so it is a very important legislation, and this legislation actually governing the roles of the center and state governments with respect to responding to natural disasters. So what should be the response to these natural disasters? So that is provided in this architecture of National Disaster Management Act. So however, the Ministry of Home Affairs is the nodal body that governs the execution of National Disaster Management Act. So this is very important, you remember this. So the nodal ministry of National Disaster Management Authority was Ministry of Home Affairs. In fact, there were several disaster management authorities and across different levels, center, state and local body or district levels. So all these disaster management bodies or authorities actually draw their powers from the National Disaster Management Act. And in fact, this National Disaster Management Act also define which calamities or which disasters actually required state-backed compensation. However, in this case, heat wave is not provided a state-backed compensation even if people have been suffering with this extreme heat wave. And there is also increasing demand from several quarters that the heat wave must be included in the natural disaster criteria or natural disaster category of the National Disaster Management Act. So the legislation is also the genesis of special funds, right? So for example, floods, cyclones, droughts have been taking place, and these disasters are put in, or they are part of the National Disaster Management Act. Now, as part of this NDMA Act, the central and state governments establishes funds, and in case any of those notified disasters takes place, and the state and central governments can take out funds from these state and national level funds, and they can provide relief efforts to those disasters, right? So you can go through what exactly is a heat wave in India, right? So how the maximum temperature of a heat wave in plains 40 degrees Celsius and hills 30 degrees Celsius, we can categorize this as a heat wave, right? So you can also go through the criteria of heat wave classification, right? Now when we talk about the notified disasters, there are 12 notified disasters. Now what are those notified disasters? So these are 12 notified disasters under the State Disaster Response Fund and National Disaster Response Fund. So they include cyclones, droughts, earthquakes, fire, flood, tsunami, hailstorm, landslides, avalanche, cloudburst, pest attack, frost and cold waves. So just remember that these are the notified disasters, because there may be questions that which of the following are the notified disasters under the National Disaster Management Act. So these 12 cyclones are notified disasters. Imagine that any of these disasters struck one particular region, and in that case the National Disaster Management Act provides that any region, either state or the national government, can withdraw funds from the National Disaster Response Fund and State Disaster Response Fund, and then provide relief efforts to those regions from these notified disasters. However, heat waves yet to be included in this criteria. And as I have already told you that due to climate change, the severity and intensity frequency of these heat waves has been substantially increasing, and because of that reason, so there were increasing demands from experts that heat waves should also be included as part of the National Disaster Management Act, so that the state governments would provide necessary relief for the people who have been impacted with these severe heat waves. Now, in fact, if you look into the data of heat wave related deaths, so it is said that the heat wave related deaths have been decreasing. The data shows that the heat wave related deaths have been decreasing, but several cases are still underreported in the sense that due to heat waves, deaths have been taking place, but those deaths were not actively reported, and that is where the problem comes. And heat wave deaths in India have been decreasing from 1127 in 2017 to 374 in 2021. So according to the data which is being provided by the National Crime Records Bureau, National Crime Records Bureau gives this data with respect to the heat waves. Now, it is very important that whenever you are writing any answer with respect to heat waves, you just have to quote such data in your answers to get further enriching your answer. Okay, so this is what National Crime Records Bureau data says about the deaths related to heat wave. And in fact, these deaths are classified as accidental deaths, but recent data with respect to the heat wave related deaths, in 2022 around 33 deaths were reported, and 2023 there were none, and this year 2024 at least 100 people have confirmed death because of heat waves. Now, what were the measures which were already in place taken by various state governments in order to provide a relief for the people who have been facing these heat wave like conditions, intense heat wave like conditions, right? So even though the data has been suggesting that the death rate has been declining due to heat waves, but we cannot confirm this. Because of increasing intensity and frequency of these cyclones, and there may be higher death rate, and in fact heat wave like conditions will also significantly impact the economic growth and livelihood of people, and it will also increases the productivity as well. So therefore, what measures we need to be put in place to provide more relief for the heat wave like conditions? So first and foremost, there were number of states who have which already put in this heat wave action plans, because frequency and intensity of heat waves has been substantially rising, and therefore a number of cities, the municipal areas and then states have already put in this heat wave action plans to deal with the extreme heat wave conditions. And in fact, National Disaster Management Authority and Indian Meteorological Department are working with 23 states to develop this heat wave action plans. Now, heat wave action plans, what they will do, so they actually have a comprehensive overview on the heat wave conditions, and they are dealing with the number of areas, so which actually provides relief for the people from these heat wave like conditions, and it will also reduces the increasing death rate due to the heat waves and reduces the vulnerability of cities and different areas from heat waves. Right, so this heat wave action plans actually provides a snapshot of regions heat profile, right? So what was the temperatures in the past, and what are the temperatures right now, right? So they actually include a lot of information about the past heat wave events that already took place in one particular region. Imagine that Odisha, right? So when Odisha implements this heat wave action plan, then within Odisha, so there will be a comprehensive information, a snapshot of the heat wave profile, like, so what was the heat wave events that took place in the past, and what were the yearly trends in the summer maximum temperatures and land surface temperatures. Everything is being provided by the heat wave action plan. So accordingly, the authorities can make a comprehensive roadmap to deal with these heat wave like conditions. And these heat wave like action plans will also provide a vulnerability assessment. So this vulnerability assessment actually maps out different regions that require immediate attention and response plan. So this is one of the key method that was followed, that is actually followed to deal with the heat wave like conditions, to draw heat wave action plans. Okay, so next article is with respect to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So this is also a very important article because Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting is expected to held next month in Kazakhstan, and it is also expected that Prime Minister Narendra Modi would not attend this Shanghai Cooperation Organization meet. Rather, our External Affairs Minister Dr. Subramaniam Jaishankar would visit, would actually take part in this Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit meeting in Kazakhstan next month. Now, why it is important? It is important because India is not a founding member of Shanghai Cooperation Organization, but it is a member of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And in fact, India and Pakistan joined Shanghai Cooperation Organization in the year 2017. So 2017, India and Pakistan were become members of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Now, when you look into the news of this, so Shanghai Cooperation Organization is a Eurasian security and economic group, right? So it deals with the security of countries in the Eastern Europe and Asia, Central Asia and South Asia, especially few countries in South Asia. So therefore we can say that the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is originally a Eurasian security and economic grouping. And this particular grouping is promoted by countries like Russia and China, and this also include other countries such as Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, India and Pakistan. Remember, India and Pakistan became members of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in the year 2017, and in fact, so these countries are full-time members of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. However, recently, Iran and Belarus will be inducted into the Shanghai Cooperation Organization as well. Now, when you look into the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, I mean, what are its major aims, what are its major objectives, everything. So it is a permanent intergovernmental organization. Now, permanent intergovernmental organization in the sense that, so it is an organization of different countries, right? So that is an intergovernmental organization, and apart from that, it's political, economic and military organization aiming to maintain peace, security and stability in the region. So especially when I say in the region, Eurasian region, because Eurasian region very often dealing with a number of challenges. For example, terrorism, especially the cross-border terrorism, drug trafficking and radicalization. So all these problems are very common in this Eurasian region, and therefore Shanghai Cooperation Organization collectively deals with the political, economic and military aspects to ensure peace, security and stability in the region. So therefore it was created in the year 2001, and India was not a founding member. Rather, India became the member of Shanghai Cooperation Organization in the year 2017. So this was founded in 2001 and its charter was signed in 2002, and its charter entered into force 2003. Right? So in 2003, Shanghai Cooperation Organization has become a permanent intergovernmental organization, right? So next, what are the basic objectives of this Shanghai Cooperation Organization? Now, when we look into the basic objectives of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, so it wanted to strengthen mutual trust and neighborliness among the member states, right? So whatever members have been existing, so it wanted to strengthen that particular mutual trust and neighborliness among all these member countries, so that they can cooperate on number of issues and they can also resolve any sort of issues which are between these different neighbor countries. And at the same time, they also promote effective cooperation. Now, for any intergovernmental organization, effective cooperation and collaboration in different matters is very, very important. So if they start collaborating and cooperating on these matters, particularly with respect to politics, trade, economy, research, technology and culture, so these areas would actually unleash the potential between these countries, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization countries, and will also promote people-to-people ties. People-to-people ties are very, very important between any countries or between any group of countries, right? So this Shanghai Cooperation Organization will essentially aim to enhance their cooperation on all these different areas. And after that, it has also identified some priority areas. Now, priority areas are education, energy, transportation, tourism, and environmental protection. We all knew that how environmental protection has been receiving a lot of traction across the world, and Shanghai Cooperation Organization has also made that environmental protection is one of their key area, along with the energy. Now, when I say energy, renewable energy, because all these countries wanted to, they actually wanted to move away from the fossil fuels, because fossil fuels are responsible for the climate change, and because of that reason they are focusing on renewable energy. And they also cooperate on education, because when you look into the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, so these are middle economies, we can say that the developing countries, most of these countries, right? And because of that reason, the cooperation in the areas of transportation, sustainable transportation, and education, quality education, is very, very important. And after that, they also aim at ensuring peace, security, and stability in the region, because as I have already told you that this region, Eurasian region, is very often has been facing a number of threats from terrorism, cross-border terrorism, Islamic fundamentalism, and radicalization. So therefore, in order to ensure peace, security, and stability, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization countries have established RATS structure within the SCO. Okay, so this is a regional anti-terrorism structure. So that structure is known as RATS structure of SCO. And in fact, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization was established based on democratic, fair, and rational new international political and economic order. So on the basis of this particular ideal principle, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization was established. Now it also has a secretariat, and this secretariat is located in Beijing, and this secretariat actually provide informational, analytical, and organizational support to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, right? So it also has a detailed structure. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization also has a detailed structure. Now when we look into this detailed structure of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, so the supreme body, okay, the top level body of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is Head of State Council, right? So this Head of State Council is the top level body of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and this particular body actually decides the internal functioning, how should be the internal functioning of SCO and its interaction with other states, international organizations, and it also considers international issues and takes major decisions with respect to the functioning of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So therefore, Heads of the State Council is the top level body of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Now after that, the next top body is Heads of the Government Council. Heads of the Government Council is the next top level body, and this council particularly approves the budget, and it also considers and decides upon issues related to economic spheres of interaction within the Shanghai Cooperation Organization member states. And after that, there is also a Council of Ministers of Foreign Affairs, and they also takes care of day-to-day activities of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. As I have already told you, there is also a regional anti-terrorism structure, and this regional anti-terrorism structure was established within Shanghai Cooperation Organization to combat terrorism, separatism, and extremism, and ensure peace, stability, security in the Eurasian region. Now it also has an official language. The official language of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, right, so is Russian and Chinese. So these two languages are official languages of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Next, a very important article is with respect to the regulation of artificial intelligence, right? Now as we have already discussed about this sphere, and artificial intelligence, as I've already told you, that this is an emerging technology, right? So this is emerging technology with a lot of potential for the development of this artificial intelligence. However, the emerging technologies, and there is a lot of scope and lot of potential for the development. It is very important that we need to address certain issues with respect to development and uses of artificial intelligence. So because of that reason, the regulation comes, and if a regulation is stringent with respect to the potential innovation, application, uses of artificial intelligence, no doubt that discourages the development and innovation within the artificial intelligence, and artificial intelligence will not be able to develop at a rapid pace, because if there are more regulations imposed by the country to address certain issues such as privacy issues, the mitigation bias, transparency, relevance, governance, confidentiality, liability, accuracy, decision making. So there are a number of issues which are started popping up because of artificial intelligence development and innovation. So now governments across the world, and specifically talking about India, so these governments wanted to regulate the development and innovations within the artificial intelligence so that the issues, ethical and legal issues are created by the artificial intelligence can be addressed through this regulation. However, the other challenge is that if we impose stringent regulations on the development of artificial intelligence, that inhibit the growth and development of the artificial intelligence, that is an emerging technology with a lot of potentials in number of fields, right? So the context is that India has been grappling with the regulatory landscape for artificial intelligence. So we also have the regulatory landscape for the artificial intelligence and regulation of its development and growth. And in fact, this sector has also seen a rapid development in recent years, and experts have been opening that a strict regulation could stifle the country's increasing artificial intelligence economy. There's no doubt that in an emerging technology, if you're coming up with more regulations, and more regulation discourages innovation and the development of artificial intelligence. But artificial intelligence as a technology have a lot of applications in number of fields, right? So therefore, in this context, appropriate balancing between the regulations and innovation is very, very important, right? So a balance is required, a balance between regulation and innovation is the need of the hour whenever we're talking about this artificial intelligence and its development in India. Now, news is that India does not have any specific laws, and those specific laws directly addressing the artificial intelligence. So as of now, we do not have any law which specifically addresses the artificial intelligence, such as deepfakes. Now, deepfakes is also one of the issue that is becoming more common and more prominent, because deepfakes have becoming more popular on the internet, that we can widely see these deepfakes, and so they actually defaming the individual. In most of the cases, these deepfakes have been defaming individuals using artificial intelligence. However, the concern is that we do not have any comprehensive law either to regulate or promote artificial intelligence. So that is also one problem. So it has instead introduced a series of advisories and guidelines. So India actually introduced a series of advisories and guidelines to encourage the responsible development and implementation of artificial intelligence and its technologies, right? So whenever we do not have a comprehensive legislative architecture or legislative framework to regulate the artificial intelligence, so of course we resort to advisories and guidelines to regulate and promote responsible use of the artificial intelligence. And India's case also, this is what has been happening, right? Now, in this context, we will understand what is the role of artificial intelligence in the development of India, especially with respect to the different sectors. So as I've already told you that artificial intelligence has a lot of potential applications in number of fields, and in fact it can also contribute to India's development, right? So artificial intelligence, we can say that it is no longer the future, rather artificial intelligence is the present. It is not the future, rather it is the present, because we are living in an era where artificial intelligence is the present, and it has the potential to determine the number of sectors and their growth and development. And in fact, artificial intelligence, specifically speaking, have a number of applications in healthcare, education, and road safety, and thereby revolutionizing India's overall developmental architecture. Now, when we talk about the applications of artificial intelligence in number of fields, right? So chip technology can be powered by the artificial intelligence, right? Now, we all knew that data is the most powerful asset. As of now, the data is one of the most powerful and most valuable asset on this planet Earth, and In future also, it is expected that the value of data would significantly increase. Now to this artificial intelligence systems, we just feed on the data, and with respect to the data, they use algorithms and all, and they behave, they imitate the behavior, and they imitate the knowledge and the thinking of human beings, these artificial intelligence devices. So data is a most valuable asset on the earth, and the value of data will continue to grow for decades to come. And the car industry is actually undergoing a huge transformation due to this technology of artificial intelligence. Now when we talk about the 5G technologies, now as of now, we had the idea of autonomous vehicles, and these autonomous vehicles are actually a solution for the road safety and prevent number of accidents. However, the technology which is being used to manufacture these autonomous vehicles are not enough to increase road safety. Rather, we require 5G. 5G is very important to further enhance the road safety and for manufacture these autonomous vehicles, and that is where we need to integrate 5G technology along with the artificial intelligence. So after that, artificial intelligence will also help us make a customized curriculum for students based on their learning needs. So each education system, if you look at the education systems across the world, so this education system actually follows one size fits all, right? So one single curriculum is made, and it is expected that this curriculum would be suitable to almost all the students. So this is one size fits all approach, and it is said that this approach is not at all working, and each student is different, and their learning capabilities and the pace of learning would also significantly different. Okay, so apart from that, the interests of the students are also different from other students. So in this case, artificial intelligence will actually be a very important player, making students more interested in learning, and we can also substantially enhance the learning capabilities and the abilities of among the children using the artificial intelligence by customized curriculum. And after that, there are certain guidelines for the artificial intelligence. So those guidelines are accountability. Okay, so accountability is the very important guideline with respect to the artificial intelligence. Now without accountability in the artificial intelligence, we cannot promote the responsible use of artificial intelligence. And after that, confidentiality and privacy, used for education and pedagogy, and used for research, used for administration and other purposes, are a number of other benefits or guidelines with respect to the artificial intelligence. Now why we require artificial intelligence regulations? So why we need to impose regulations on artificial intelligence? Because artificial intelligence have the power to impede the sustainable development goals, or so whatever progress that we have made in the sustainable development goals, that can be eroded by the artificial intelligence if we promote irresponsible use of artificial intelligence. Because whenever we used artificial intelligence in an unethical and improper manner, so it would lead to the erosion of achievements that were already achieved as part of SDGs 2030. Now it could also weaken the ongoing efforts across all three dimensions: the social dimension, environmental dimension, and economic dimensions. And apart from that, artificial intelligence regulation is very important to mitigate the risks. Now what sort of risks? Because artificial intelligence very often comes with the bias, discrimination, privacy violations, safety hazards, right? So the regulations, whenever we impose regulations, so those regulations can actually help mitigate these risks. And after that, we need to talk about the transparency and explainability as well, right? So most of the artificial intelligence systems are opaque, so they are not transparent, and therefore whenever they are opaque and not transparent, it is actually very difficult to understand the decision making. right? So because whenever the decision making or the process of taking decisions is transparent, then we can expect that we can understand those decisions that were taken by the authorities. However, whenever it is opaque, so it is very difficult to understand the decision making process, and therefore regulations can actually promote transparency and explainability of artificial intelligence, right? So a next very important article is with respect to the G7 summit, right? So G7 is a group of 7. It consists of 7 industrialized and developed countries in the world, so including US, Canada, Germany, Japan, France, UK, and Italy. So these are 7 industrialized developed countries, and in fact earlier Russia was also part of the G7 grouping, so that becomes that makes this grouping G8, but due to Russia's invasion of Crimea in 2014 led to the expulsion of Russia from the G7 grouping. You just remember this. So all these G7 members are members of G20 also. All these G7 members are members of G20 as well, right? The context is that leaders of a group of 7 countries, or otherwise it is known as G7, which includes US, Canada, Germany, all these countries. So they actually met in Italy, okay? So on June 13th to June 15th, so along with European Union leadership, right? So this summit was conducted. So annually they conduct this summit to discuss various issues, different issues. For example, Russia-Ukraine war, the Middle East crisis, and different sort of issues are being discussed in this G7 summit. However, India has also been invited to this G7 outreach summit 11 times over a period of time for this G7 summit, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi attended 5 times out of 11 times. So that G7 summit has invited previously, right? We have to understand that what that G7 summit hoping to achieve in this context. So what exactly the G7 summit hoping to attend here, right? So it wanted to bridge the differences between the West and the rest. Okay, so there is a lot of gulf between the West and the rest of the world. And because of that reason, the G7 summit has been trying to find out a new ways to fund support for the Ukrainian war, and it wanted to invest in Africa, which has been grappling with the migration, climate change, artificial intelligence challenges, right? So these were the major issues on the G7 agenda. So the major issues, all of course, obviously the Ukraine summit, and apart from Ukrainian war, and along with the Ukrainian war, so they also have the issue of investing in Africa, which has been grappling with migration, civil war, conflicts, and climate change related incidents. And artificial intelligence regulation is also another issue which is part of the G7 summit considerations. So all these G7 member countries have agreed to make around 50 billion $50 billion available for the Ukraine, and so they have made this available from the frozen sovereign wealth funds of Russia. So and it has also held a special energy for growth in Africa summit to further enhance investments in Africa, especially in the areas of clean energy. And the G7 group of countries have also attacked China for its aggressive and assertive stance in South China Sea and rest of the Indo-Pacific region, and especially for its coercive trade practices. And it met with the leaders of 10 countries including India and other multilateral organizations as part of this G7 outreach summit. So along with this G7 summit, there was also a G7 outreach summit to discuss concerns that the global south has been facing. Now India is very often known as the leader of the global south. Now in this context, inviting Prime Minister Narendra Modi to the G7 summit is essentially to ensure that the G7 group of countries wanted to understand the concerns that the global south has been facing, so thereby they can achieve the objective of building the differences or bridging the differences between the West and the rest. And in fact, these G7 group of countries have been trying to battle its own image as a tied set of countries representing the world representing the old world of the Western elite, right? Because when if you look into the G7 group of countries, so these group of countries are very often seen as a elitist group, and G7 has not expanded ever since. And because of that reason, with respect to G7, there is a view that it is an elite club of nations and elitist in character. And how important is India for this G7 process? Now, when we look into this G7 summit, and when you look into the importance of G7, now all these G7 countries are like-minded nations, and they have shared interests and common vision with respect to different areas across the world, right? So they are collectively called as West, and they also have a lot of interest in countries like South America, Africa, and South Asia and Indo-Pacific region. Now, in this context, India is a leader of the global South, and India can also play a very important role in the Indo-Pacific along with all these G7 countries, right? So India is not only a key member or a very important member of this global South, but India recently hosted the Voice of Global South. So this conference, Voice of Global South, was hosted by India in the year 2023, and it is also a member of G20 Troika. So G20 Troika in the sense that, so the last country of G20 which hosted the G20 summit, and the present country of G20 summit, and the next future G20 meeting hosting country. So all these three countries are considering a G20 Troika. Now, as of now, the G20 Troika countries are India, Brazil, and South Africa. So therefore, these G20 Troika countries were invited as part of the G7 summit in Italy. Now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is the central figure at such outreaches, especially in this G7 outreach meeting. So that was conducted recently. And in fact, it is also an important platform for India. Right. So for India, the outreach session of the G7 meeting actually are very important, because it actually encompasses deliberations on different areas, and it is also a very important platform for India to showcase its achievements and outlook towards the world as well. And here Prime Minister Narendra Modi talks about the recent 18th Lok Sabha general elections. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi also held that this Lok Sabha general elections, the 18th Lok Sabha general elections, is a victory to the democratic world, because it is one of the largest, it is the largest democratic exercise in the world, and because of that reason, we can call it as a victory of the democratic world. And its importance in harnessing the technology and artificial intelligence, and to bridge global inequality, as well as roadmap to fight climate change. And these are the major issues where the G7 summit, a G7 group of countries, and G7 outreach summit has actually focused upon across the globe, right? So it was very important to pay heed to the global South's concern. Now, global South has also been facing a number of concerns, for example, slowing economic growth rate, poverty rates, unemployment rates, and also lack of infrastructure, climate change, renewable energy, climate crisis. So all these problems global South collectively facing, right? So it has also been facing the brunt of global uncertainties and the tensions. And now in this context, the developed world has already imposed sanctions on Russia, and that has substantially impacted the food, energy, and even fertilizer supply across the world. Now, in this context, it is very important that how developing countries has been grappling with these uncertainties because of food security issues, fertilizer security issues, and even the energy security issues. Now, in this context, what is the future of this G7 summit? So, the G7 is increasingly under attack for being an elitist and non-inclusive group, because apart from these 7 industrialized developed countries, there were no other countries which were part of the G7 summit, right? So it doesn't include world's top 10 economies, right? 3 of the top 10 economies, they are India, China, and Brazil, right? So therefore, because of that reason, G7 very often seen as an elitist and non-inclusive group, which has been losing relevance in the present global order. And in fact, G7 was failed to change the course of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and it failed to stop Israel's devastating bombardment of Gaza or the West Asian conflict. And in fact, it was also failed to deter China from its inroads into the global connectivity and infrastructure and economic influence. And so therefore it has been raising the questions on relevance of the G7 summit or G7 group of countries in the present context. So since it is being viewed as a elitist group and non-inclusive group, so there is a need to bring reforms into the G7 also to make it more relevant for the current world order, because it was not able to change many of the global happenings or events that were taking place, even though it was a group of elitist and wealthy nations, right? So that's all in this lecture, and thank you so much. So please like the video and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you.